just things looking good and creating shiny object is not our goal. Our goal is to turn business around as well as creating long-lasting impression. My first KPI is making sure that the Gen Z, that's a number one consumer right now, are they crossing the lease line? The second piece is the dwell time. How long are they spending inside the store? Some of the Gen Z might not have the disposable income to buy a bag yet, but are they spending time with the brand and are they getting a good experience? Because maybe when they have a little bit of a saving, they start looking for the bag to buy. I'm happy if a Gen Z comes into the store, they spend 5-10 minutes into the store, and even if they buy 6 months from now, that's great. What we don't want is that they pass into the mall and no interested.
One of the trends I've been seeing in the last years is a lot of brands are struggling. The brands that are killing it right now are actually making their stores into flagships where customers feel like I'm not just buying a bag, but I'm having this entire experience.
I always say to my team, putting bags on shelves is not enough anymore. What is the added value for me to come into a store? What is that emotional connection that I'm building with you? How am I being treated? That's when my team plays a key role in creating that connection, making sure that that connection is positive, unforgettable, and they want to come back for more.
Today, we're shifting gears from our usual deep dives into retail technology to explore the creative forces that shape how we experience brands. I'm joined by Giovanni, who leads Global Visual Experience at Coach, overseeing everything from store layouts and pop-up installations to digital activations for over 1,000 stores worldwide. We'll unpack what visual experience actually means, how Coach creates consistent yet locally adapted brand moments, and why Gen Z is making them rethink everything from coffee shops to gaming platforms. Plus, Giovanni shares insights on balancing what he calls magic and logic in retail creativity. This is a very unique episode, different from the ones we've had so far. Let's dive into the creative world and shift gears from technology.
Gio, very excited to have you on the pod today. I'm particularly excited because we're breaking from our tradition of being very much in conversation with the technical parts of the retail world and the digital geniuses and moving into the creative genius that goes into making retail the brilliant experience that is. Without giving too much away, want you to sort of have the moment to introduce yourself to our audience. Tell us a bit about who you are, what drives you, and let's jump right into it.
Yeah, thank you for having me on this space. So Giovanni, but everybody calls me Gio. Originally Italian, as you can tell from a very long name. But I've now been in New York for 10 years, and I lead the Global Visual Experience at Coach. I've been a coach for 14 years. I started my tenure here based out in Hong Kong, looking after all of the VM for Asia Pacific, and then moved here in New York 10 years ago. And my role spans across a lot of different teams. So managing first and foremost the VM team, which is the closest team to product. The 3D studio, which kind of designs all the incredible things that you see around the world popping up on LinkedIn, social media, you name it, magazines. The 2D studio, working around graphics and branding, and the events team, the runway team, and our show keep getting better and better every fashion week. And then most recently as well, the digital team that kind of dives into more the experiential digital world when it comes to gaming, AR, AI, you name it, like some of the new fun things that we have at play. And then we also have a very strong internal production team. So everything you see in the creative team, we also have a little bit of a backbone to the team, which is incredibly important, is the production and the project management team that makes sure that everything that's designed by the incredible creators gets executed on time with quality and budget. So, and then I have field teams as well. So I wake up very early in the morning because I have half of my team is based in Asia, around Singapore, China, and Tokyo, and Europe, out of London. And they're basically our eyes and ears in the field, and they execute the vision, but also make sure that what we're doing globally works in the region, because we cannot do the same creative that then goes around the world. We do a lot of localization to make sure that we merge our local nuances and local flavors between the countries. So very diverse team, a lot of talent here. But yeah, that's what I do and who I am.
There's a lot to unpack there. I'm really excited to get into all of those things. For the audience, right? We have listeners who are deep retail experts, but we see a lot of people who are just curious about retail and interact with it on a daily basis, but want to understand what's happening behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And so before we jump into all of those juicy details, in very simple words, what is visual experience, right? When you say you're responsible for global visual experience, what is that? Is it how the stores look? Is it how I feel when I'm in the store? What's, if I was your grandmother and I didn't understand any of this stuff, tell me what that means to you. And we'll go from there.
So I think, we evolved the team from visual merchandising to visual experience 10 years ago, where visual merchandising is really more about product handling. So there's a team that maybe of visual merchandisers that kind of work on VM direction that we send to all the stores globally. And then we have VM in stores that actually execute that vision. So when you go in every store of Coach globally, worldwide, they kind of feel and look the same. Of course, there is nuances by region, but they feel the same. Visual experience is everything on top of that. So it's basically what you feel, and it's the brand execution across all the different touch points. So whether it's a pop-up, whether it's an event, whether it's in a showroom, whether it's a runway show, whether it's a game, whether it's an ad, whether it's a campaign, whether it's a celebrity and how they're dressed, is basically the brand in action. And it's about every single emotional connection that we are creating with the consumer gets kind of like cascaded down about everything that the team does. And again, creating that one consistent message, but then tweaking it by region is kind of critical for us. So it's kind of a long answer, but you kind of get, it's kind of quite complex because we're trying to make sure that every time a consumer sees the brand, it's consistent around all the touch points.
So what that means then, again, breaking it down, is which objects are placed where in the store, how the lighting is done, how maybe people move even within the store. All of those are things that you and your team are defining, so that wherever in the world I go, I get that sort of consistent Coach feeling. Am I getting it right?
Yeah, and that's more the visual merchandising piece. When it comes to experiential, it goes beyond stores and retail. It gets more into like pop-up exhibitions, 3D window designs, installations, gamification. I think the base is like our retail store. And that's more the visual merchandising aspect. The experience is when you talk, even to your point, like the staffing. What is the staff wearing? What music are we playing in the stores? Are we serving water? Are we serving coffee? Are we doing a styling session in the fitting rooms? What's on the glass? What's on the window? What's playing in the video screen in the store? What's the smell in the store? So there is a lot of different components that kind of consist of that 360 experience. And when you walk into the store, you don't even know, because most of the things that we do are hidden. Right. But somehow we want to make sure that you are coming to the store and you have the best experience possible. Also, it could be the speed at which you are transacting, right? Thinking about how easy is it for me to make a selection? How easy is it for me to shop? How easy is it for me to pay? How easy is it for me to check out and get my email on my phone instead of a printed email? What is the shopping bag I'm leaving for? Is it wrapped in the right way? Like what are some of the cues and how am I say goodbye? Am I giving you some styling tips? There's so much that goes into that one transaction. And there's different team members that kind of look at different parts of it, but there is a lot of psychology involved into what we're doing. So there's a creative aspect, there is a logic aspect, and there is a psychological aspect about even how the stores are laid out. What goes on the front table, what goes in the back table, what goes on the front wall, where does the color go, how the mannequin styled. So it's a 360 evolution. And we do a lot of work here in Hudson Yards when we actually do a mock setup to make sure that we feel good, because it's really hard to see all the components together unless you actually see it live. And it's a really fun process, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like something which would be very hard to just do in a conceptual way and execute without actually testing it out, interacting with it. You mentioned things like checkout velocity, you mentioned things like the dressing of the staff and all of that, right? And then how do all of those elements interact with each other? One aspect that got me thinking about this as well right now is, how do you measure success of something like visual experience? Like, is this something where you say it's a feeling and we want to create a feeling and we just know what that Coach feeling is? Yep. Or is there some way you're required to, because in the end, this is a business, to tie that into some metrics? I know that that's not the exciting part as a creative person, But I'm trying to understand where those lines cross.
It's funny. I think as a team and as a company, we're very consumer centric. So I think first of all, everything we do from the very beginning, the consumer's at the heart. Even as a brief, when we get a brief from the business, I would say just things looking good and creating shiny object is not our goal, right? Our goal is to turn business around as well as creating long-lasting impressions. So my first KPI is really making sure that the Gen Z, and that's a number one consumer right now, is, are they crossing the lease line?
Mm-hmm.
So are they walking into the store, right? That's number one. The second piece is the dwell time. Like how long are they spending inside the store? Right now, some of the Gen Z might not have the disposable income to buy a bag yet, but are they spending time with the brand and are they getting a good experience? Because maybe in 2 years from now, or in a few weeks from now, when they have a little bit of a saving, they start looking for the bag to buy, right? So the dwell time for us is very important, because then they start understanding, asking questions, start to learn about the brand. Maybe they've not heard about us before. Maybe they don't know anything about the Coach bag, which, by the way, it's on my screen there. But so those are some of the KPIs that we get, and of course sales, right? But at the end of the day, I'm happy if a Gen Z comes into the store, they cross the lease line, they spend 5-10 minutes into the store, and even if they buy 6 months from now, that's great. What we don't want is that they pass into the mall, they're no interested, but the baggers are no interested. So there's a lot of work that happens at the front of the store, at the back of the store, sales associate to convert. So it's just different components of the consumer journey, but everything starts from the outside of the space.
That makes a lot of sense. You're essentially doing a lot of the pre-work almost, where you're setting up the field, you're building that brand, you're building that relationship even before someone's ready to buy.
1,000%.
Where you can't do it at that point through a transaction, right? Where you could argue that once I've bought the product, the quality, the feel of holding it, showing it off, etc., that hooks me in. But if I'm not yet at a place where either financially or emotionally or whatever, I'm not yet ready to buy, how do I build that relationship with the customer through the storytelling and through the visual experience? That's really exciting, because a lot of the people we talk to, they're thinking about the customer relationship after the transaction, and the part before the transaction is often quite nebulous. What I'm wondering now is, you mentioned Gen Z is a huge target, and when I think of Gen Z, my millennial mind just immediately associates with the word TikTok, right? Talk me through how you're crossing that line between the physical world into the digital world. And what goes into then saying, just as we've created this physical experience that's globally consistent yet locally flavored, we're able to do that same thing in the online world, which is so different.
Of course, it's way easier to impact the TikTok video, because that can happen instantly, right, on someone's phone. I think impacting 1,000 stores, it's very challenging. But I think the first thing is, like, the look and feel is the same. There's consistency. There is also consistency about our TikTok channels focus. We've been focusing on our number one item bag, Tabby, and right now we've just launched our Soul sneaker. So you're going to have that visibility. It doesn't matter what channel you get into, whether you go on coach.com, whether you go on TikTok or Instagram, or even our pop-ups, for example. Everything is featuring Tabby, right? So there is that level of consistency. Also, the way we are displaying the bag, it's quite casual, right? We want everybody to be able to touch and feel comfortable with the space. That's what kind of sets Coach apart from other VM in other brands. And I think that's the feeling that you see on TikTok. Of course, we're not going to be able to replicate TikTok in a store, but what's playing in the store is, of course, the campaign video that, again, is in the same aesthetic. That, and also featuring Tabby. So that's kind of like a little bit of the connection there. Sometimes there is an exclusive that goes up on TikTok and we have it in select stores, and then you drive people to the store with geo-targeted ads. But again, that's like a small piece of the equation. But I think the look and feel is consistent, but the execution is different because the channels are quite different.
How does that work though? Do you work closely then with the social media teams, with the advertising teams? So they'll also run their concepts through your function.
Yeah, we work very closely. It's two separate teams, but we speak the same language. So also, if you think about the way you consume TikTok is seconds, but when you go into a store, you spend minutes. So presentation is quite different there. So again, putting consumer at the heart of this. And then what we do, when we do big installations like pop-up, we work with the social team or to bring influencers and celebrities when we do events, which kind of help fuel interest and traffic to those locations. And we'll be doing a lot of those around the world, mainly in Asia, to kind of attract a new audience. And usually there is things for them to do. That's something that we have seen helps a lot. Like, for example, with Tabby, 2 years ago, we had a big Tabby tour that went around all the universities and campuses in North America, which was actually selling Tabby, but at the same time giving away ice cream in the flavors of the Tabby bags. The lines around the campuses was enormous, right? So the majority of them, they might not have bought the Tabby bag, but they were searching online about the Tabby bag. They were trying to learn about what Tabby was. They tried to learn about the Coach brand. So they were waiting in line to get an ice cream. While they were waiting in line, we had created a gamified experience about a personality test to kind of choose the flavor. So again, things for them to do. The dwell time was 5 to 8 times longer than them spending time into a Coach store. So that means that you have somebody 18 to 22 waiting in line, looking at the Coach logo, looking at the Coach bag, and understanding that's Coach and kind of creating that desire and demand. So there is a lot there to unpack in terms of like giving activities. Some of them were on their phone, some of them were physical. Everybody wants to do a game, maybe they're bored. But the line was so long that actually the game helped. And then they were like, oh my God, I'm also purple, or you are purple. And then you start creating those micro communities on TikTok and Instagram, which again, weren't expected for us. And that was another way to kind of combine online and offline in a very seamless transaction there.
That's really interesting, because one of the things I'm trying to make sense of, what you're describing sounds like an experiment, right? So you're doing a lot of, I'm guessing you're doing a lot of these pop-ups and experiments. Right. Walk me through how you, like, from like, you know, day zero, the brief, the need, to coming all the way to the end of such a project where you say, we've done this thing now, the ice cream thing took off. There's, you know, suddenly another 500,000 people out there who are familiar with the Tabby bag. Walk me through that. Like, what's day zero of that, and where does that journey, like, how do you get to that end result?
Usually we start, let's just say like a year out with the season. So right now we're looking at spring next year. So basically like March next year already. And usually we start more with like a little bit of a brainstorming with Stuart, our creative director, about the season, what the season stands for. Of course, we have the business objective around Tabby, our soul sneaker. We know that we need to target the Gen Z audience. So usually we start with some kind of consumer insight and some data. And then the creative team kind of starts ideating with all of those facets together. And then we just start mood boarding and concepting. And then we land on one idea. We share it with all the countries. And then the countries are the ones that really come to us with locations. Some are more iconic than others. So there needs to be some bespoke designs. Some are more like core, right? Just to run the business. And then we come up with more tiers of creative. So one creative, but like different budgets and different like location tiers there. And that's how really we start. And we bring together the 3D team, the graphic team, the events team, now the hospitality team, because some of those pop-ups even have cafés now incorporated as part of that. And then the team kind of moves along. We usually do all designs in-house. And the production team that will run and making it up. If you want to launch in February, we need a brief by this date. So that's all kind of the back end that kind of comes in. So right now you're seeing all the Tabby pop-ups going live around the world. They're happening in different weeks, different months. But usually there is a unified vision and usually a unified even sample set that we send out to make sure that when you see 20 or 30 of those, they look incredibly consistent, not just from a design, but also from a material and execution standpoint, which is very hard. But that's why the team here is incredible. And they've been doing this for now 10 plus years. So I'm always amazed by how far the team goes every season.
That's impressive. I mean, I guess the consistency is also relevant, again, if you connect it to the online world, because it's not like people in the US are only seeing US TikToks and US Reels, right? That's being global, and you're a global brand, and you want people to feel like Coach in Dubai and Coach in New York and Coach in Australia is the same sort of experience that they're having.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think having that level of consistency helps. And we see a lot of even comments on our social media, when this is coming to my city. Of course, we're not going to be able to be everywhere. But I kind of love that level of demand and also sometimes scarcity. But we have 1,000 stores, so plenty of space for you to come and buy the Tabby bag or the Soul sneakers. So.
And you're not doing that kind of fake scarcity that some brands are known to do, right? I can walk into a clothes store and buy a Tabby bag if I want to buy a Tabby.
Yeah. Even if, believe me, most of Stuart's new bag is sold out. Like for example, like his slug bag was gone in like one weekend. Some of our charms, like our cherry charm, it's the number 4 most wanted item on the Lynn's list. It's gone, sold out. So, and all of that is real.
And that's kind of the expression of the build-up you guys are creating through these activities in a way, right?
Yeah, and also if I think about, we have some key celebrities, for example, Bella Hadid has been loving the brand. So I think her wearing the Brooklyn bag was a great sensation. Or her wearing
wasn't a sponsored activity?
Yeah, I mean, she loves the brand. So it's incredible. And now we're creating a partnership with her, of course, because, she loves us so much. And of course, we love her. So there's just a lot there. Again, not everything comes just from one activity. I think it's a series of activities that kind of create, I would say, this brand health. Then now is kind of like where we are. And the point for me is like, how do we keep innovating? Right. So even for Tabby, like we've been working on Tabby now for 4 years. For 3 years, we've done something very different. But now it's like, maybe it's time to do something evergreen. So that doesn't matter in 2 or 3 years from now, like it's always Tabby. So we picked a color, we picked a shape that we think is more iconic, Tabby 26, and we're going after in a very big way. And then the difference there every season is the way we personalize and we do customization events to kind of bring self-expression in the heart of the brand, which is our brand purpose. So that's the way we bring local artists and local influencers, but the core of the design is the same, which is again pretty new in the industry. Because the idea is, it's a new season, we want a new design. It's like, actually, we have billions of people around the world that have not even experienced us yet. So we want the first impression to be about Tabby and to be about a brand purpose.
Makes sense. So creating sort of an evergreen entity, but evolving the story around it as you go while keeping that central character intact.
Exactly. So for example, like right now in China, we have 5 Tabby pop-ups. They're live. The idea is that we do them, we run the results, and then in 4 months from now, those Tabby pop-ups then will travel to other 4 cities, and then they'll travel to 4 more cities. So it's also really good not to throw things away. I think I hate doing that. Like we started this during COVID, pre-pandemic, and I think it's become a big part of how we do visual experience at Coach. Even if you think about our holiday installations, have been the same for the past 3 years. We're not doing new windows every year. We built an incredible, iconic Coach Christmas tree, holiday tree 3 years ago. We love this so much. We did more the second year. We're doing more the third year. And we are reusing it for a 4th year coming up this year. I mean, holiday is holiday. Why reinventing the wheel and just throwing things out? So the customers have reacted so well to it. So, but the way we activating the events in the store around the holiday season are different, but the base is the same. And now it's become part of our DNA and language for holiday.
So what I'm hearing is there's sort of almost two tracks, right? There's this one track which is around creating that consistency, but at the same time, you're talking about these experimental things you're doing. I'd love to hear a bit about Coach Play, for example. You mentioned coffee shops and gastronomy getting into the mix. So, let's go into that side of things. When you see certain cars of certain brands, without seeing the logo from a distance, that's that car, right? And in a way, this evergreenness is about saying you have this iconic entity that, even in my sleep, I'm going to wake up and someone's going to show that to me. I'm going to know that's the Tabby bag. I get that. How do you combine that with this whole experimental world? And what is that experimental world at all right now?
Yeah, you actually went right to the point, because I think when we started talking about evergreen Tabby, we actually did study a lot of like car brands, food brands, so like a Coca-Cola or like a Ford or like a Mercedes, Rolex, and I think the level of consistency is also something that we're gonna get back in 5-10 years from now, right? So it's being consistent. So Coach Play is a little bit more of a different beast. I think it touches more of our retail fleet, and it's not a temporary installation. Usually it's like a 2 or 3 year store that we get in select location, and the nature of that is really more about experimentation and testing and learning. So an incredible extreme localization, right? So all of the Coach Play locations, and now we have 12 around the world, are very consistent. So they feel the same. They have the same Coach vibe. When you walk in, they're incredibly local. So we work
Can you
with
give me an example of one that you're working
like for example, we have one in Japan, in Tokyo,
Mhm.
on Cash Street, iconic location where we made the space incredibly kawaii. Kawaii means like cute, very Japanese, right? The way we have done that in Singapore, for example, is very different because the Singaporean culture is very different than Japan. The way we have done it in City Creek in Utah is very different because the demographic is different. So what we do for Coach Play, usually before we start, we have time with the store managers, the local team. We even go to the country and kind of try and understand the local nuances of that area. And then we try and bring partners on board, whether it's an artist or anybody else that can help us kind of deliver the localized message. But we use each location to try new things. So for example, Singapore Shop House was our Coach Play in Singapore, and that's where we tested our very first Coach Cafe. And now we're rolling out Coach Coffee shops around the world. So it was a little bit of a testing ground for something new that we haven't done, or it could be a testing ground of, for example, a more limited edited assortment, for example, there, or it could be a testing ground of a new color palette, a new material palette that we want to use and roll out. So, but when you go into those Coach Play stores, people stay there way longer than an average store. There is things for them to do. We're pushing co-creation and customization to the next level. We're pushing food and beverage to the next level. The idea is to not do too many, to make them incredibly bespoke, unique, but to learn things from them and then can be cascaded down. Like, for example, changing uniform for all of our staff, or the interaction around styling in the fitting rooms is different there. And we have learned that, and now we're rolling it out in some other locations. It's not only they're crossing the lease line, but they're spending the highest dwell time in the fleet. And it doesn't matter what country they're in. They're incredibly Instagrammable. There is a lot of them. There's a lot of rooms for you to discover in the space. There is interactive moments. Everybody that walks in puts their phone out. Instagram sends videos to their moms, their daughters, their friends. And usually people come back for more. So they're incredibly interactive. And I think the filter that we use for Coach Play is the 5 senses. So we try making sure that we are touching all of them in a very deep way. Those stores also have a very bespoke playlist that is incredibly localized as well. And of course, from a site perspective, they're very arresting from the outside. So they feel like more like an installation. So we also took some learning from our pop-ups into this, where it comes to balancing color, balancing our coach codes, and most importantly, balancing the event programming that we do in those stores at events, whether it's weekly, monthly, depending on the location.
One thing I'm wondering, how much cross-pollination happens between pop-ups, Play, and the regular stores? Do you think of these as labs to test new concepts in? Should they just exist on their own? How do you sort of draw those lines between the different?
So I think what's important that the same team is working on all of them. So there needs to be a level of continuity and brand identity across all of them. We can experiment in 12 doors is very different than the way we can experiment in 1,000 stores, right? So because then it's not an experiment, it's a rollout. I think that's maybe the only difference. Also, I think if we do something in one store and we make a mistake and we learn from it, it's okay, right? I think there is that level of testing and learning, failing and learning for the next project. That's critical, and we keep testing. For example, we opened our store in Cash Street a year ago, and we're gonna be testing something quite cute and new in the next few weeks, which has nothing to do with the opening, right? It's something new. Because the stores got such high traffic. So we keep going to those stores for experiments.
And like, do you have some examples of things that worked really well there, and you thought this is actually worth rolling out across the fleet of 1,000 stores? Like, are there some examples of
Yeah,
things?
I think it's the level of interactivity that you have in those stores and the fact that they feel very democratic. Everything is very easy to touch. If you think about Gen Z, they really want to make sure that everything is accessible to them from the outside in. I think it's critical. The other piece as well is what we're doing with co-creation and craftsmanship bars, where you can customize your own tabby, and now your own shoes coming up as well. And now we're bringing craft to life in a new way in those locations. Also, the way sales associates were interacting with the staff. I think that's something that the uniform got rolled out from Coach Play and things like that. So there's pockets of learnings.
That's really fascinating, because I think, one of the trends I've been seeing in the last years, right, is a lot of brands are struggling, a lot of brands are dying out. And I feel like increasingly the differences between, have you understood that retail, especially physical retail, is more and more an experiential play than a transactional play, or have you not understood that, right? It sounds very banal and simple, but I feel like the best brands that are killing it right now are getting that, and they're managing to do that not just online and getting personalization right online and getting the social media right, but are actually making their stores into those kind of flagships where customers feel like, I'm not just buying a bag, but I'm having this entire experience.
1,000%. I always say to my team, like, putting bags on shelves is not enough anymore, right? I think during the pandemic, everybody learned, including my 86-year-old parents, how to buy things online, right? So what is the added value for me to come into a store? They can buy anything online. And in some cases, they can get it delivered within one day. So to come in, they need more. And I think that's, for me, where experience comes in. What is the added value? What is their emotional connection that I'm building with you? How am I being treated? How am I talking to you about the brand to my friends? That for me is critical. And I think that's where my team plays a key role in creating that connection, making sure that that connection is positive, number one. And number two is unforgettable, and they want to come back for more. The second interaction could be online, or the first interaction could be online, and then they come to the store. But creating a level of consistency, that's why it's so critical, because once they have a bad experience, it's very hard to bring them back. So that's why the first transaction should be their best transaction.
In the B2B world, we talk about how you kind of need to have 15 meaningful touches with your customers, right, before they consider you.
At least, yes.
I'm guessing in the consumer world, that's even more brutal, right? Because you have thousands of more brands vying for their attention.
Also, there's something for me around the fact that, like, nobody needs a new bag. Nobody needs a new, like, it's, you know what I mean? And it's more around really getting deep with, that's why I think for me, the consumer information is so critical. And it's like what makes them thick, like what excites them. And that's why sometimes you can't just design into the void. You have to design with a consumer insight in mind. And that's why I think the shift to being more of a consumer-led organization has been critical for the creative team. Creativity is quite subjective, right? How do you make it objective? You need to start with a challenge, start with that brief, and ideally the consumer insight is in that brief, and then have clear KPIs on how do you score this project, and what does success look like. If you do come up with an idea without a brief and without the KPIs, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like non-creative, but I think there is a lot of value to kind of merge, we call it internally the magic and the logic, right? The logic is everything I just talked about. And then the magic is this creative output that hopefully answers the brief with the consumer insights. So we're actually trying to solve a consumer problem. Like, it's this balance of like left brain, right brain. And that's why in the team, as I mentioned at the beginning, the teams play equal role. The creative team and the production team and the team that briefs in plays a critical role. They're all equal. And all three of them have to work incredibly closely together to bring it to life. Imagine if you have a great creation, but the quality is not good and it's 2 days late and it's over budget. That's not success. Right? Yeah. So there is a lot of things that goes into it. I know it's not the sexy elements, but they are really critical to make sure that the installation is consistent, but also is successful.
I almost had to think of Apple, right, when you spoke about magic and logic, because I think if there's one brand that embodies that, it is
That,
Apple, right?
that's
You
it.
you unbox a laptop and it feels like something special is happening, right?
That's it.
But and then you do the same thing with like without naming any brands, but any other random laptop, and it just feels like, okay, now I have this device to use. But when you open that Mac and there's the sound and the
It's the
box
experience.
opens,
Exactly.
um, but yes, like you said, there's a lot of logic going into that because they're doing that at a scale of millions of devices that's been done in a factory, and somewhere those dots need to connect. And I guess that's the difference between just doing art and doing creative work within a business environment. One has parameters and restrictions around it. Um,
There's two things. Now that you mentioned the word heart, so two things I want to mention. One is about Coach Play. Now, the Coach Play stores are incredibly different than our current fleet. We have seen literally Gen Z walk in and open their mouths and literally just saying, "Oh my God, is this Coach?" That's what makes the creative people happy, right? Because you're really creating this meaningful experience with the consumer. And then for the Tabby pop-ups, imagine they're coming in, they're buying the bag, and then they're posting and sharing it with their friends and kind of seeing how proud they are. That's what makes me happy. Of course, they've bought the bag, but their level of like them feeling better about themselves into their daily life and the value that that bag plays, whether they're going on a date, whether they're going to an interview. I think that's really critical for us. And I think, I follow so many people online just to even see how they interact about the brands. And you see how many fans sometimes post and repost my stuff because they love it. And I think the value that we have in their life is way greater than we think.
You spoke about online, and that sort of made me think a little bit about the fact that you guys are also very active there, right? So in the Zepetos, the Roblox of the world. Tell us a bit about that and how that aligns with what you're doing. Is it sort of like there's the introverted Gen Zs and we want to get them where they are, and there's the extroverted Gen Zs and we want to get them in the Play stores, or how do those things connect, and how's that working out
Do you
actually?
know what? The gaming world has been another place where we've done a lot of experiments over the past 5 years, but also a lot of testing and learning. I think there's been a lot done in the metaverse. We have worked on like virtual stores during the pandemic because we had to, we had no choice. We have worked with a company called 010 on a virtual mirror featuring Tabby, which was quite successful a few years ago. And then most recently, we have just launched games on Roblox and Zepeto featuring Tabby all around self-expression. And those have been incredibly successful for us. It was mainly executed in the US. We know that the majority of Gen Z is on them, right? But also what we knew was that we are not experts in gaming, right? We're more experts in physical activation. So instead of building our own gaming platforms, we actually worked with Zepeto and Roblox developers to work with us on that. So number one, this was way easier. Number two, we were able to kind of touch on the core of the game. And I think that's what got the success up. We worked with a lot of experts in the field. And I think, again, what was different was we also featured Tabby. We also featured, instead of trying something totally new, it was all about Tabby, our core icon. It was all about self-expression, which is our brand purpose. And we kind of brought it to life in different places. So, again, more chapters to come. But it's still in that vein of experimentation. And I think kind of relying on talent, external talent was a big win for us.
Exciting. There's your usual buzzwords running around at the moment: AI, AR, VR, what have you, right? Technology wise, but also, in non-technological contexts, there's a lot of shifts happening in society. There's a lot of trends emerging that are recent, and we're just in the early days of them, right? I even think of TikTok as fairly recent in that sense.
Yeah.
If Giovanni is looking at Giovanni in 5 years, or in Giovanni in 10 years, or Gio in 10 years,
Yeah.
what are you seeing as top three things that you see impacting retail big time? What are you preparing for, and what are you working on building in already into the next, you're in spring 26 right now. So what's a flavor of the new that you guys are excited about, you personally, and where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think one consistent piece for us, just just me as a person, but also me as a coach leader, is this idea of continuing to innovate every season and every time. And again, doesn't mean coming up with a new creative, but like kind of moving at the speed of the consumer. The consumer is going to be moving faster than we know. And that's just not what I think. It's just the way things are moving, right? Whether it's AI, whether it's TikTok, whether it's real estate, whatever it is, like everything is going to be moving way faster every single time. So we have to move faster with them. That's like one piece. I think there is also a level of returning back to simplicity, in my opinion. Right, that's why I think this evergreen piece came to life as well. Like there is so much happening around the world, and I think we can provide that space of like maybe peace to everybody. And I think that's what I think some of the retail spaces are for. I mean, that's one of the reasons why health and wellness are becoming so important, or travel, because people are needing to be together with people. And a lot of people are spending more time on that. That's your point about, for us, leaning into coffee shops, for example. Like people just want to be together. Like I know this feels quite like old fashioned, but you've been on your phone for 5 years now. Let's be together. And we've seen Gen Z doing a lot of that, right? So those are kind of like two big trends. I think the idea of testing and learning is going to be with us, going to stay with us. So, and that's one of the reasons I love being a coach, because, you know, we can kind of pilot a lot of initiatives, of course, always in line with the brand strategy and our focus that we have. And then learning and moving fast with it. I think we have incredible talented team, not just in Hudson Yard in New York, but around the world. And kind of learning what works in China, what can work in Korea, Singapore, Europe, India. I think those maybe are the three. They're more like helicopter view, I would say, not quite specific. But so I would say speed, number one. Number two, about moving at the speed of the consumer. And the second one will be this return to simplicity. And the third one will be innovation and testing and learning to be part of the agenda. And again, this isn't just in my team, it's for everything: supply chain, IT, technology, design, merchandising, retail operations. Like we should continue to innovate on every single channel.
Does that mean you foresee that in coming years you might even be planning next season in the previous quarter, or do you think you'll still be in the sort of 1 year ahead trend that normally happens?
I think 1 year ahead is good, because also I think we want to try and look at learnings from the previous season. For example, I want to know how post-holiday went before we start the next year. But possible. It all depends on where the brand goes. Like when we're thinking about evergreen and modularity, maybe that has a little bit of room, right? Because you don't need a season. You can launch a Tabby shop anytime today. It doesn't matter what season you're in. So that changes totally the paradigm of how we design and how we scope the spaces and how we sell the concept to the landlords and the malls and all those. So I would say that we're going to be in a very different place in 5-10 years from now. So I also see a lot of like different channels and different pieces of the world colliding, whether it's entertainment, whether it's food and beverage, music. Like I think all the cultural nuances are starting to merge into one another. And I think that's a very exciting place to be.
Couldn't agree more. Speaking of speed, I think we're at a good point to slide over into our rapid fire round. I have a lot more topics to discuss with you, but we do need to keep our podcast within the timelines we try to keep at. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Don't think too hard. Give me the first thing that comes to your mind. Just have fun with it. All right. You mentioned holiday displays. What was your favorite non-coach window display last year?
Oh my God, it's so funny because we don't do windows anymore. We only do holiday because we took all the windows out not to waste materials, and we wanted to have windows to be much more open into the store. But I will have to say we have bespoke windows in Malaysia. It's a Rexy window, which is our dinosaur mascot that kind of sticks out of the building. Yeah, we have some still bespoke windows around the world. We call them windows of the future. So I think that would have to be my favorite. Anything to do with Rexy. I'm a big fan of her.
Awesome. If you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
I'm going to the Bahamas next weekend for 3 days because the weather here has been a little bad. So, and it's right before Shop Talk. So very excited to go there in 10 days.
We have 6 degrees Celsius here in Berlin, so I'm very jealous of you, but I'm also very happy for you. a book that you recommend to someone who's interested in getting into visual experience?
Do you know what? I would actually move to podcast. I know that's more radical. I think just having the time, I do a lot of different podcasts around visual leadership, creativity, 15 minutes, 30 minute slots. You cannot have an excuse not to do it. So I think if you really want to get into this, just pick your podcast that works for you. And there is so many out there. And it's also broken down into like smaller chunks. It's on your phone. I listen to it when I wake up. I listen to it on my way to work. Like, I love to get different perspectives. So I would just move to podcasts. Nothing against books, but I'm more of a podcast type of guy.
I hear you. And your favorite TikTok influencer right now?
Oh my God. It's not a TikTok influencer. She's more of an artist. It's Lady Gaga. But I think what she's been doing with the new Abracadabra and the way she's actually asking everybody to do the dance, she's creating this big movement globally. Of course, she knows what she's doing. And I'm sure there's a team behind it. But it's not just launching a new video anymore. It feels like a campaign that she's doing. Or the same thing that happened when Wicked came out. I think celebrities are not just more celebrities anymore. They're becoming influencers in the way they're shaping culture. So I would say Lady Gaga because it's top of mind for me, and I'm a big fan.
Awesome. That's what we want to know. What's top of mind? That's the end of the rapid fire, but I wanted to jump off of something you just mentioned. I think everything is becoming more and more experiential, right? If you think of the artists that are killing it right now, Lady Gaga, great example. Swift, the Eras tour, Coldplay. Like recently, we've had this Coldplay Music of the Spheres tour happening, and it's so iconic. There's visuals of that you just sort of resonate with. It's about so much more than just the music, right? It's about creating this feeling. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's all converging: food, music, culture, retail, art, and
you know what I think? I think the brands that are going to win are the brands that are going to have the unique point of view on this. I think there's a lot of copying and pasting, and the way we do it at Coach will be very different than the way we do it in some of the other brands. Like the way, for example, we're bringing coffee shops to life is very different than the way other brands are doing it. Of course, so many brands have got coffee, but when you go into a Coach coffee shop right now, you feel like you're in New York City. Mm-hmm. Like we're bringing New York. We're also bringing coffee shop to outlets. Like outlet stores in North America, there's nowhere else for you to get a good, decent cup of coffee. So again, it's creating this community hub in the space where maybe people don't have a space to hang out. And of course, every single patron, every single coffee is Instagrammable. We have developed like a little mascot of Little Miss Joe. Like it's kind of fun. We want to bring a little bit of fun into the space. And maybe they can't afford a Tabby bag, but they can buy a Coach Tabby cake for now. And then they can start talking about the brand. So there's just a lot to unpack there in the food and beverage space. So much more to come on that space soon.
Very excited. Is there one in Europe somewhere?
Europe, no, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. Yeah, we have 12 to 15 now, mainly in Asia, 2 in North America. There is no plans for Europe yet, but more to come. We want to do it well. So we want to bring a partner on board and things like that. Most likely will be Paris and London first. Yeah.
Exciting. I can't wait to try it out. Thank you, Giovanni, so much for your time today.
Amazing.
It's been a massive pleasure speaking with you. Very eye-opening, not an area I personally am very familiar with, but also the way you tell the story is inspiring. And I'm very excited for our listeners to learn more about Coach, about what visual experience means, and hopefully follow you along on the journey as you continue to innovate there. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Retail Spotlight. Tell us how you found it, whether you're in the retail industry and want us to dive deeper into certain topics or invite certain guests, or if you're a passionate shopper enjoying a behind-the-scenes look, we want to hear from you. Hit us up with your comments, likes, and feedback. And if you know someone who loved this episode, please share it with them. Lastly, if you want to stay informed when we go next live with the next episode, make sure to hit the subscribe button. See you next time.